Agile and Scrum aren't perfect, but they are better than Waterfall if you know when to break the rules. Today I'm talking about my path to Scrum Mastery, where I started, and how transcending the framework is sometimes the only way to deliver true business value. Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Internet Scrum Master. I have over 20 years experience in tech and finance, and I've been a full-time Scrum Master for the past decade. Thanks for tuning in. I got my start in technology in 2006. I was 23 years old, and it was a year after dropping out of film school and several months of waiting tables. The job was temporary and seasonal. It was a position in the quality assurance department of a company that built tax software. We made corporate tax software for large accounting firms. I landed the job because I was good with computers. I used to build computers with my friends in high school, network them, play StarCraft, all that fun stuff. But I was really good at the job, finding bugs. So I was converted to full-time at the end of the season because I had logged all the bugs and I really didn't get involved in office drama. I would just kind of come in, do my job, and go home. Upon conversion, I was moved into a release and support position that was mostly like server and application administration, what we would refer to today as DevOps. And that's what I did for the next 6 years. I won't talk over all the projects I worked on, but I will tell you that I had a mentor who was a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and she helped me learn Lean. We did Lean Six Sigma, and I learned the Six Sigma part, but when it was in software development, really we were focused on Lean, making things more efficient, eliminating waste. The idea was that through more process efficiency, quality would emerge. I would say that's generally true. I don't, since we didn't do the data gathering, I don't know if that's actually true. With Lean, she did help me get my green belt. Scrum was around back then, but the first Scrum guide hadn't been written, and our organization was fully Waterfall. My mentor coached me extensively on Lean principles, including Kaizen, or continuous improvement. That's something I carried with me through all the projects I worked on, keeping them as lean as I knew how to do back then. I took continuous improvement to heart. I applied it to my personal life as well as my professional life, just trying to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday, and then just kind of repeat that day over day, and eventually you've made a lot of progress. And so I took that to heart. It's really become part of who I am as a person. Ultimately, I used continuous improvement and Kaizen as a way to help me quit smoking cigarettes back in 2010. This was several years after learning the principles and making myself a little bit better every day, taking baby steps, and then eventually those baby steps made into giant strides. And one of those strides was quitting cigarettes. And it was I haven't smoked since then, so it's been really helpful and really good for my health and finances both. All of that was in Wichita, Kansas. In 2012, I moved to Denver and I found a tech job working a service desk. It was also in finance. We were doing debt collections. So I took service desk calls, tech calls from law offices or lawyers at law offices that were needing access to the debt collection systems. So still in finance, just a different part of the financial world. I was happy to be in Denver, to be in a larger city, but I definitely wasn't thrilled to take that job on a service desk. Though in retrospect, it was a really good experience. I met a lot of great people. I learned a lot about business, just generally, because it was a small business, so I had access to talk to a lot of the C-suite, and they'd previously worked at banks. So that was not only my first real experience interfacing with the C-suite from a service desk perspective, it was also my first exposure to Scrum. I wasn't on a Scrum team, but there were developers sitting nearby the service desk, and I would listen into their daily stand-ups and listen to their Scrum Master. After a couple years on the service desk, I found a job at an investment bank doing systems integration. This was much more like the DevOps type of work I was doing back in Wichita. So I was pretty happy with that and to be at a larger firm. They began an agile transformation around my 1 year anniversary. I overheard my boss talking with another person about creating a Scrum team, and they had all the roles, but they needed a Scrum Master, and they didn't have a headcount for that. I jumped in the conversation and volunteered to fill the role. They agreed. They sent me to training, and they hired a dedicated Scrum coach on contract to work with me one-on-one for the first 6 months. During that 6 months, I learned basic and advanced Scrum Mastery. He taught me the Shu Ha Ri concept. I have a dedicated in-depth video on that topic. But in short, each is a phase of maturity. Shu phase is where you follow the rules blindly because you have no knowledge or experience to challenge them. Ha is you are intentionally breaking rules for a particular business outcome. And Ri means you are transcending the rules. You are acting in a natural and instinctive state where you can make something that creates a lot of business value or is otherwise high quality without following the rules at all. You can think of this in terms of like jazz music doesn't follow traditional musical rules, yet it works. So that would be an example of Ri. So again, check out my video on the topic. So I was definitely in the Shu phase back then, meaning I was following the rules by the book because I knew very little and I needed all the guidance I could get. Good for me that I like to learn, and I absorbed as much of the information as I could during that time, and I applied it to my work as best I could. I found that I was good in the role. The company agreed, and they made it my full-time job. I came with the title and the new salary, which was nice. I did not know the salary of a Scrum Master at the time I volunteered for the job. So that was a nice surprise. Unfortunately, due to personal issues I was going through, which was a difficult breakup with my fiance, we had a house together, we had to sell our house. That caused my work to suffer. I was very stressed, very depressed. Ultimately, I left the company to sort out my personal issues, to sell the house, and all of that. So that was a bad time. But I had learned a lot in the time I was there, and I was going to carry that forward with me moving into the next role. Several months later, I'd moved into a one-bedroom apartment, and I found a Scrum Master role at a telecommunication company. The department I was hired into had previously been a local startup company, and less than 6 months earlier, they had been acquired by the telecom, and the telecom was forcing them to adopt Agile and Scrum. As you can imagine, there was a lot of pushback from the leadership in that department. They had previously run that business as their own because it was their own and it no longer was, and now they were following orders from an enterprise that wasn't in the same city as them, and that was very difficult. It was a chaotic environment, and I did my best to stay focused on my Scrum team, insulating them as much as possible from anyone trying to get them to do side work, including the CEO, which happened daily. Over time, the chaos settled down. There was still a lot of complexity, though, and we had started a Scrum of Scrums with several of the other teams in the business. As a side project, I got involved with the R&D team, not as a Scrum Master, but just with the little spare time I had, I would go just sit with them and chat with them. And the company was really looking to expand their patent portfolio. So they were really just telling us to think of new ideas. And as part of that, I was issued 2 utility patents listed as inventor, sole inventor on one of them. And in fact, I have that, if it'll go in focus here, but you can see there is my patent. Things were getting better as more structure was put in place. Not perfect, but pretty good. All things must come to an end, as they say, and in July 2020, I was laid off with many other people. They gave me a fantastic severance package, though, and so I wasn't hurting, and I got to spend that summer, barely looking for work. There wasn't a lot of work being posted in the summer of 2020, if you remember. So I had a nice kind of peaceful summer while I lived off my severance package. In December, I found my next Scrum Master job with an insurance company. It was a remote role, at least at first, and it was then that I really began to take more critical view of the framework. Much of the coaching I had was focused on face-to-face meetings. Stand-ups were supposed to be people standing around a desk and talking. The standing was important because it forced the conversation to be short. People don't like to stand around for more than 15 minutes, and that was kind of the point of it. In a remote setting, we're all sitting, unless you have a standing desk, and we're looking at a screen. We have a camera in our face. We're not really looking at somebody else in the eye. So I would say it was kind of around then that I moved from that shoe phase of blindly following the rules of the Scrum Guide and the Agile frameworks to the Ha phase, where I was intentionally breaking the rules of Agile and Scrum to add business value, because following the rules just wouldn't work anymore. So one more example of this, beyond the obvious, we can't stand in a stand-up if we're all remote. Another factor is the retrospective meetings, which generally, if you're in a room together, there are websites with dozens or maybe even hundreds, I don't know, of different retrospective formats that you can use to keep people engaged, to get them to give you the information that you need to make the process better, to figure out what's working well, what don't they like that's going on. And in a remote setting, that the number of different ways you can facilitate a retrospective boils down to like one, basically, where you just write a bunch of cards on a virtual board, vote on which ones you want to talk about, and talk about them. That may be a little too reductive. There may be more than just the one, but that's the one that I've been using since 2020, and before then I would change them up pretty frequently. Eventually, the company found an office, and they started the return to office mandate. I would quit and find a new job when that ultimately happened. But first, we had the building. It wasn't furnished yet, and I utilized the unoccupied office space to gather all of the development teams and do a Lego for Scrum training workshop. Lego for Scrum is a guided workshop activity that teaches scaling techniques for Scrum, not the scaled Agile framework, but more of a large-scale Scrum framework. It's less formal. But in the activity, we create what we call dev teams. These can be business users. These can be developers. It doesn't really matter because we're building with Lego. But using the Scrum framework, we create a product backlog and user story mapping and user stories all on sticky notes. And we build a little Lego town where all of the development teams we have kind of coordinate on like who's building what and how's the town going to come together. And it's a full day activity, and we do 3 sprints. So much fun. Love to do it. I'm going to share some pictures on the screen. And while I liked the company, I really had no interest in commuting to the office. I was south of Denver in the suburbs, and it was an hour commute either way, and I just it wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. After we kind of proved that remote work was effective and we were producing software, it seemed like they just wanted to babysit us. On top of that, much of the dev team was remote in other cities, so it would be like 2 of us sitting in the office, still looking at a camera and still being kind of isolated from the rest of the team. So it didn't make much sense to me, and I resigned, citing that as a reason. I moved into a different consulting arrangement with a different firm, working on assignment with a bank. I was also, again, on an Agile release train. This was a brand new release train with a new RTE, new Agile coach, brand new team, some of which had prior Agile experience, some of which didn't. The team I worked on had very little, but they were welcoming to me, bringing me on, and I had no issues at all working with them. They were great. They were willing to learn and take my advice, and it was really good. One of the best experiences with that team, definitely. I helped them mature their team through the first couple of years on that Agile release train. And over that time, I obtained several other Scaled Agile certifications and started participating in Scaled Agile events. I went to the Scaled Agile Summit in Denver, and really started to really mature into the role. I felt like maybe up until this point, I was kind of performing the work of a Scrum Master, and it was really through this arrangement with this team and this company that I started to feel that I was really embodying what a Scrum Master is. There was a lot less, asking for permission or asking what way this should be done, and more saying, this is how it needs to be done. It's not being done this way. Let's make it change. And that in that way, I feel I have really grown into the role. And in this role, with this bank, AI really started to show up in the work. I began working on many AI projects, not as a Scrum Master, but more as a project manager ushering use cases through governance approval. Some of these use cases I found would be better served as on a release train as an Agile product, and I began working on proposals to integrate a few of them onto the Agile release train, moving them away from project work and onto product work. And it was around this point, again, like I was saying just a minute ago, that I feel that I moved from that ha phase of intentionally breaking the rules to the re phase, which is transcending the rules. I was no longer really thinking about this, and this in order of operations in a technical sense. I was just operating from something within that knows this is how this needs to work, without really giving it a lot of analytical thought. Yeah, I began operating at a higher level, working instinctively to onboard that product without supervision and truly taking ownership, not breaking the rules, but not really following them either, simply moving the product onto the train using the best path I could find. I can tell you it wasn't a picnic. Some people thought it was interesting and a good idea. Some people actively pushed back. Others sat back and took notes. In the end, it was a multi-million-dollar product, at least one of them, that otherwise wouldn't have come to fruition. Or if it would have taken months or years to get it across the finish line. After crossing the finish line, I looked back and I realized how far I've come. And I started writing this script. My mindset of continuous improvement and my belief that Agile and Scrum is a better way of working based on my real world experience with both Agile and Waterfall, and having worked for so many employers at various stages of their Agile maturity, all of that has led me to the conclusion that Agile Scrum are not perfect, but they are better than Waterfall in most software development use cases. But also that the rules of Agile and Scrum must remain flexible. Teams should be allowed to break the rules in a controlled and intentional way, in a way that adds business value. Scrum Masters should have the freedom and agency to transcend the rules entirely, to propose solutions that fit the framework in spirit, even if they break the framework in the strictest sense. Delivering business value is the ultimate goal. If you're a Scrum Master and you're stuck in that shoe phase, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below about the biggest roadblock you're facing right now. And if you found this helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Take care.